Ross Chastain pulled a one-of-a-kind move at Martinsville, and my first reaction was, that cannot be allowed. What a way to think outside the box, and I wanted to find the moments within NASCAR where drivers found the most unique ways to get advantages. Pretty much almost like finding an exploit, and these are the ones I came up with. Ross Chastain just did the move we've all tried in NASCAR video games. He rode the wall on the final lap at Martinsville, and by doing so, he gathered enough points to advance into the Championship 4 of the NASCAR playoffs. This was one of the most viral moments in a NASCAR race of all time. It hit the mainstream media by being #1 on SportsCenter's top 10 moments. I for some reason never thought this could even work in real life, let alone that someone would be brave enough to ever try it. I think you could look at all 40 drivers in the NASCAR field, and Chastain would have been the only one crazy enough to try this move. This isn't the first time Ross Chastain has created his own racing groove, because at the Indy Road Course race 2 months earlier, he used this access road to get the lead, but NASCAR ended up ruling this one back. Now I'm starting to wonder if Chastain intentionally looks for stuff like this on a weekly basis. He reminds me of a Trackmania player that looks for the wackiest routes to get to the finish line. Daytona, Talladega. These are some of the most popular and favorite tracks in NASCAR history, but is it any such coincidence that these tracks are huge? Well, maybe. The bigger the better. So why not keep that same mindset when it comes to choosing a law firm? Morgan & Morgan is the largest injury law firm in America. The 800 lawyers they have across the nation have recovered over $13 billion for thousands and thousands of clients. And that is more dollars than there are people on Earth. You will pay nothing up front for their services unless they win, and I know you love winning. How do I know that? Well, because you watch NASCAR, just like me. It's so easy to get started. Just dial #law from your cell phone or visit www.forthepeople.com. I recently started watching UFC, and I quickly found out that Morgan & Morgan is actually their official law firm partner, and it makes me like these guys even more, and it's so cool to see them supporting UFC and now branching into NASCAR. I made things super easy for you guys to go check them out, and you can do so by looking at the description down below. Before stage racing was implemented in NASCAR, it wasn't uncommon for NASCAR to throw debris cautions when trash or metal was sitting on the racetrack, but NASCAR drivers began to think that maybe they could create their own debris cautions if they threw their water bottles out of their car. And I'm sure some drivers do this innocently, but hypothetically, if you're struggling on a green flag run and want a caution, throwing your bottle onto the track might just make NASCAR call one. While this has happened from time to time in the 2000s, the New Hampshire race in 2015 had a few water bottle incidents, and 2 of them were spotted on the apron at separate times in the race. It's unclear who exactly threw these, but NASCAR had finally stood their ground and made it clear that they would not tolerate throwing your bottle in an effort to get a caution. Brad Keselowski estimated that there's probably 20 bottles on the track or even in the grass at any given time. Jeff Burton jokingly said that he thinks water bottles should be labeled with their corresponding car number. And if this turned out to be a bigger problem, that is something I could definitely see NASCAR doing.
We've all done it. We've all done that.
I haven't.
Oh, come on.
The 2014 NASCAR season was only the second year of the Gen 6 race car, and teams quickly figured out that you could pull on the end of the right side skirt to gain an aerodynamic advantage. I wish that I knew what team figured this out first, but by the end of the year, nearly every single race team was doing this on their first pit stop of the day. When you look at the finish of the Texas Fall race, you can see from Kevin Harvick's onboard that this metal piece sticking out from Keselowski's car may have been what caused Gordon's tire to go down. NASCAR banned this from being done in 2015, and although they did that, teams are attempting to make car modifications all the time. If you don't believe me, let's revisit the time where Kevin Harvick had a rear window violation in the Las Vegas race he won in 2018. Essentially, the 4 team figured out a way to pull the rear window down and warp it in a way that more air could land on the spoiler, and this pretty much gave him more downforce than anyone else in the field. Genuinely, teams are always thinking of ways of how they can possibly quote-unquote cheat without getting caught. I know I'm not on a race team or anything, and I don't get paid to do stuff like this, but I would have never thought of something like this as a way to increase downforce. Chase Elliott and his team actually noticed this in the middle of the race, and they even noticed that when the 4 car got up to speed, the window would push down even further, making it more effective. And as a result of this, they were penalized 20 points, and the team was fined $50,000. Whether intentional or not, Stewart-Haas Racing found an exploit, but NASCAR shut it down pretty quick. Over the last few years, we've seen situations in which a teammate of a driver is told to slow down, not pass a certain car, or let someone else pass pass in order to help them out in the point standings. Sometimes this is crucial because it can be the difference between one driver making the playoffs versus another. In 2020, Eric Jones was told not to pass his teammate Denny Hamlin because Hamlin needed every point he could get to advance into the championship 4. I'm personally pretty cool with this, as I think you should be able to work with one of your teammates to achieve a greater goal. In 2021, we saw a situation at Bristol that caused Chase Elliott's tire to go down after contact with Kevin Harvick, and since he was out of contention for the win now, he decided to slow Kevin Harvick down. By coincidence, this helped Kyle Larson catch up and eventually pass Harvick to win the race. But since Elliott was not directly told by his team to help Larson, he faced no penalty. In 2022, Cole Custer's team told him to slow down and disguised the reason as saying one of his tires were going down. This was just to cover up the fact that they needed to let Chase Briscoe by to give him enough points to advance to the round of 8. The thing about this was that only Cole Custer was docked any points. And if you're a big team who can afford to pay the fines, why not do it again and again if it means you have a chance to win the championship? Joey Logano accused Eric Almirola of messing with the restart of a race at New Hampshire in 2019. No disrespect to Eric Almirola because I know he's seen videos on this channel before, but he doesn't particularly lead very often, so it could have just been an honest mistake, but he slowed down after the pace car left, causing the cars behind him to stack up and allowed him to get a big jump on everyone else. You have to maintain pace speed even when the pace car pulls into the pits for obvious reasons. You don't want to have the whole field stacking up into each other because they're not expecting the person in front of them to slow down. Although you're not allowed to do this, it's no question that this has been done on a less obvious level to gain the biggest possible advantage as the leader on a restart. NASCAR has become heavily based on aerodynamics, especially with the Gen 6 car, and drivers figured out a way to potentially get an advantage on the rest of the field when it comes to qualifying at tracks like Talladega and Daytona. Since the driver's window and window net are the main access point to get inside the cockpit, air rushes into this window and it's believed that this causes the car to slow down ever so slightly. The solution to this was to place your hand right behind the A-post to block as much of this air as possible. I watched Talladega qualifying from 2022 and I noticed one specific thing. Daniel Hemrick was one of the main drivers who were actually doing this, and I'm now a firm believer that this works. Hemrick advanced to the second round of qualifying and proceeded to start 3rd place overall. And that's where I'm gonna toss this over to you guys. If you were a NASCAR driver, would you choose to place your hand in the window to help block air, or do you think this doesn't really help? Let's debate this one in the comments below. I'm genuinely curious.
And you see some drivers do it, some don't. It's just a driver in his mind thinking, what can I do? I'm gonna do everything I can. If I think it might help, I'm gonna do it.
What's the most dangerous thing you could do in a NASCAR race? Well, besides climbing on the top of the catch fence, it's probably running out onto the track to retrieve a tire while the cars are still racing. This happened recently at Talladega, where a member of Hailie Deegan's pit crew fumbled a tire, and they ran across the whole entire pit lane and into the grass just to get it back. The racing group couldn't have been more than 50 feet away, and the trucks would likely have been going over 170 miles per hour at this part of the track. Luckily, none of the cars were passing by at this very moment, but it could have been an absolute disaster if something were to go wrong. This isn't even the only time a move like this has happened. A member of Marcus Ambrose's pit crew actually did this in 2009, and while it's a dangerous move to make, it pretty much forces NASCAR to throw the caution every single time. Do whatever you want with this information, but cautions can play into certain drivers' favors depending on the timing. Sometimes drivers and teams will attempt to get a yellow in any way possible. If you're still here, it's probably because you enjoyed this video, but there is no time for me to beg you to subscribe. I gotta have you check out NASCAR 1 in a Million moments because I know you'll enjoy that too.